It's fascinating how Japanese knitting patterns can convey lots of information in a short form of a drawing with a few notes. The biggest challenge, of course, is to decipher it into actionable instructions, and it is especially challenging to those of us who are used to written patterns, because Japanese patterns are quite different. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to approach them. For an example, I will use a pattern from this book, Japanese Knitting Patterns for Sweaters, Scarves, and More, by a talented Japanese designer, Michio. Let's take a look at the pattern and see how to read it. This book has 23 patterns that are both for knitting and crocheting. I picked a pattern for this poncho that could be also converted into a cardigan. This pattern has a few design elements. It's worked in several colors, it has several stitch patterns, and it has an interesting structure that could be converted, poncho could be converted into a cardigan and vice versa. So I like this design because it gives us the opportunity to see how all these different elements are explained in a pattern. So here's how the pattern looks like. It's just 2 pages, which is absolutely incredible for a pretty complicated pattern like that with many design elements. The first part of the pattern is easy. It's just the materials and the short instructions of how the pattern is worked and how it is finished, how the project is finished. What I like about this part is that along with the yarn recommendations, the designer also offers substitution yarns. So if you don't have that particular yarn, you get instructions how to substitute, what kind of yarns you should use to get similar results. So that's, I think it's quite knitter friendly. The pattern itself has 2 charts, 2 drawings, and a chart for the stitch pattern and color pattern. It's all in one piece. When you just look at the pattern in this drawing, it might be a bit scary even, I would say, because it's different, right? I will take this note away. But never mind all the digits, all the words, and all the drawings. Look for words cast on, because that's the starting point. So usually these words are at the bottom because the patterns are usually starting from the bottom going up. Sometimes, depending on the project, and there is another project I want to show you, that's a sweater that's worked, no, it's a cardigan actually, that's worked from the neckline. So the cast on, the words cast on will be at the very center. No matter where they are, just look for the words cast on. Once you find the words cast on, that means that that's where you start from. Then the second step, look for the arrow for this one that shows the direction of the knitting, where you go, right? And then the simple trick is place your finger on the words cast on and start moving it along the direction of the knitting that is shown by the arrow. And pay attention at every little detail, every little element. The pattern is not really crowded. This drawing is not really full of notes. So there are notes everywhere and symbols, but it's not like you cannot read through it. And as soon as you start doing that, moving your finger and pay attention at the details, you will understand how it works, because this drawing is not just some drawing. It's basically a drawing of the piece that you have to make. It's a body, and it says make 2 the same. So it's basically how your knitting, your project should work, should look on your needles. And then once you understand that, that totally makes sense. Starting from the very beginning, we cast on 180 stitches, and then we move to the first stripe that is divided, and it's not a stripe that is a color stripe, it's a stripe that has different stitch patterns in it. So this one is worked in 2x2 ribbing in main color. Another thing is, look at the symbols that are right here and right there. And the symbols show us that we have to work to start with 3 knit stitches, 2 purls, and then 2 knits, and that means we go on from there. So we continue 2 by 2 ribbing, but we start from 3 knit stitches. How do you know the symbols? That's easy. The book, of course, provides a symbol glossary over here. It's called Knitting Basics, and then it not just shows you what the symbol is and what the meaning is, it also shows you how to knit it, which is quite helpful, I think. So no matter even what language you use to use in the patterns, you will understand what is meant by those little drawings on how this particular stitch is performed. So these symbols tell us how we are gonna work, in what color we're gonna start working, its main color, and it also, if you look to the right side, you will also see for how long you work on this stripe. It's 4.5 centimeters, 12 rows. So in just a few words and symbols, you get all the information you need. And then when you finish this stripe, you keep moving on your finger, and then you move to the next stripe that is worked in stockinette stitch, stockinette stripe pattern. And that's when we look at the chart that shows us that the stockinette stripe pattern would be right here, and it's worked in different colors. The main color and then the contrasting color that is abbreviated as CC, number 2. Another good thing about the chart that it shows you, again, it's very visual. You look at the chart and you see both the colors and you see the textures. So the textured stripe pattern is right here. The designer assumes that we are smart enough that we don't even need all of the numbers of rows, because it's quite easy to see that this is 4 rows, right? And it's explained row 1 and row 2. So we are only provided the numbers that really matter. How many rows of the stockinette stripe pattern? We see it's row 8, and then we see that 12 rows repeat, starts from row 1, 2, and it ends at row 12, and then we see that's row 20, and that's all we need, basically, because if we have more digits over here, it would be crowded and we might just get lost in it. So the designer even avoids that. So she gives us the numbers that we really need, and she doesn't give us the number that we can easily figure out. And then you just go on and on working in the stripes, and when you come to the neckline, instead of giving you lines and lines and lines of text, here's what you see: bind off 36 stitches right here at the center. So that's easy, right? And then you see that we need to decrease such and such, so many stitches and so on. It doesn't tell us how exactly we need to decrease, but at the same time it does, because it shows these 3 little symbols, and that means 2 knit stitches from the neckline, neck edge, and then a decrease that from the chart, from the glossary at the end of the book, I know that it is slip 1, knit 1, and pass the slip stitch over. So that's the type of the decrease. And this way we know, okay, we need to work to the last 4 stitches, because we need 2 stitches for the decrease, and then we need 2 knit stitches at the very edge of the neckline. So with just these 3 little symbols, we get all the information we need, and a bit of kind of common sense, I would say, common knitting sense. And that's it. And then you go along the pattern, and you see, pay attention to all the little notes. You see this little mark here. It says end of sleeve placement, and that means we just put a stitch marker here, and then when it's time to move to the sleeves, that's where we pick up stitches around for this sleeve. And then again, it shows us the arrow, how we move from that point. We go this way, we work on the sleeve. That another benefit of this way of depicting a pattern is that there is little chance that you would miss something that is usually marked as at the same time. Because when you look at this chart, at this drawing, you see what's happening in the project right away. So if you see the neckline here and then something over there, you understand that it does happen at the same time. So it's really hard to miss because you don't have the words, you have the visual right away. And then when you look at your needles, what's growing there, if it's in some way different, the shape is different, or something is different, then again, you catch it right away. Then there is something going wrong. But with the visual like that, if you are careful enough not to miss any of the little marks and measurements, which is not that complicated at all, then you shouldn't have any issues with the errors. You shouldn't have any problem with missed, instructions or different stitch patterns. And then you should end up easily with the same little piece that is then assembled into a beautiful poncho and cardigan at the same time. As you see, once you find the starting point, the whole pattern starts to make sense. In many ways, Japanese knitting patterns are like puzzles. They could be mind-boggling at first, but as soon as we understand the logic behind them and start putting pieces together in the right order, it's extremely rewarding. To download this tutorial as a set of step-by-step photo instructions, follow the link in the description. Thank you for watching this video and have a wonderful week. I'll see you next Thursday.